you very much, Debbie, and delighted to be here with this wonderful team. Let me just very quickly say that I'm a lot more pessimistic than Alyssa in the sense that the targets are really not good enough. Let me just very quickly say why I'm saying this. I don't believe we have a carbon budget to stay within 1.5 degrees to give a manageable future. If I just take you where we are today, we know that ice has been melting over the North Pole at a tremendous rate, much faster than any of the predictions that were made 10, 15 years ago. And the net result is that half of the Arctic Sea is now exposed to sunlight during the Arctic summer. And the result is that the North Pole is no longer a cold place in the middle of the polar summer. It's quite a warm place. And the net result is a very big distortion in the Northern Hemisphere weather systems, but worse than that, sitting there in the blue Arctic Sea in the summer is Greenland, and Greenland's ice is now melting with a rapid feedback. And we can explain the feedback very simply. As it melts, the dust that accumulates on the surface of the ice is now accumulating because the dust exists right through the ice layers. It's accumulating at the surface, and that ice is now looking quite black, and it's absorbing sunlight. So this very big positive feedback means that we are at massive risk of flooding much faster. Of course, the Greenland ice, if it all melts, will give rise to a global sea level rise of about 7.5 meters, and that will take quite a while. All of our predictions about how long that would take, 200, 300 years, have now got to be dished because of this rapid feedback on the warming. The previous 10 years ago prediction of flood risk points out that Southeast Asia is the area of the world most at risk for two reasons. One is because of rising sea levels, and many of their land masses are very close to sea level. In fact, 90% of Vietnam is very close to sea level. Essentially, it's been pushed out by the Mekong River over the last many centuries, and that landmass is therefore very close to sea level. And the prediction from 10 years ago was that some 50% of the landmass would be flooded perhaps once a year by mid-century, just 30 years' time. The latest re-prediction by the same group tells us that will happen every year with 90% of Vietnam flooded. Vietnam is a very big source of rice. The Mekong Delta, the biggest rice paddy fields in the world, will no longer be productive once they've been salinated by the incoming sea. In the Southeast Asia region, you may have seen that Jakarta was underwater in January this year. And the prediction is that Jakarta will no longer be a livable city within less than 30 years from now. And the Indonesian government is now planning to move their capital to higher land. But of course, much of Indonesia is also very close to sea level, and that's another big rice producing area for the whole of the Southeast Asia region. Now, that's just the beginning. And I'm going to say, of course, everyone knows about Bangladesh and the number of cities, including Calcutta, but even on the other side of India, Mumbai, that will no longer be livable, probably by mid-century, is extraordinary. We're talking about cities that have been developed over the last 30 years, no more, 25 years. The tiger economies have been growing. If anyone's been to Jakarta recently, you will know that it's a bustling modern city. And it means that that has been an investment that is no longer going to be worthy because it won't live into the future. And that future I'm talking about is very close. So I believe that where we are today with greenhouse gas levels where they are today is already too far. If we add in carbon dioxide of 415 parts per million and methane gases and use a steady state level, which we should do, we're at well over 500 parts per million. And I do not believe that we have a manageable future, even at this level. So if we hit net zero tomorrow, I think we're in deep trouble. So what I'm setting up a Center for Climate Repair, we have major objectives. One, deep and rapid emissions reduction. Two, we need to see that we get greenhouse gas removal going at scale as quickly as possible. Our objective, working with universities around the world and working with governments, is to see that we can achieve something like, and we think it's achievable, 30 to 40 billion tons of greenhouse gas removal a year. And if we did that, we might get down to 350 parts per million in the atmosphere, CO2 equivalent, by the end of the century. In the meantime, we have to buy time, because ice will still be lost from the Arctic unless we can do something about this. And we therefore also need to focus on how we can manage to refreeze the poles. And I'm talking about the Arctic, the Antarctic, and the Himalayas. These are major objectives, and I do believe that, yes, there will be an expense, but this is all a risk management expense for the future of mankind. So, Natasha, Alyssa, I think we need to go much, much further. We certainly need to get to net zero emissions as quickly as possible. The main message there is get to the least possible emissions, and at the same time have greenhouse gas emissions building up as quickly as possible. I believe we've got a very short timeline to manage this, to avoid perhaps 100, 200 million climate refugees before we get to mid-century this year. So it's looking rather risky in my view. And unless we spell this out with clarity, it's not going to be manageable. Now, I know that what I'm saying is not agreed by everybody in the climate science world. But let me say this. If you do a risk analysis approach, and I've been working with actuaries from the City of London, you will know that you're not looking at the possibility that your house will survive and not burn down in the next few years with a 50% chance. You really also have to look at the lower probabilities. And certainly everything that I've been saying isn't in a much lower probability than 50% chance. So I'm afraid what I'm saying is we are suffering from what is a wonderful outcome in the whole world, which is the rapid growth of a global middle class. The rapid growth, middle class, I'm defining as people who spend between $10 and $100 a day each. Just over 1 billion in the year 2000, well over 3 billion today. And that is a group of people who want to consume at the rate that we have been consuming at. Livestock is massively going up because of the rapid increase in demand for milk and meat. And likewise, rice production going up. And both of these are big methane producers. And methane increases in the atmosphere is a very big reason why I'm so worried. And of course, in the Arctic region, if we don't manage to refreeze it, there's the real risk of massive methane explosions. There are already methane explosions in the region of Yamal in the north of Russia. And if these explosions increase in size, there's been about 1,000 of these large explosions so far, we can anticipate very much higher methane levels. So I haven't got any really good news here, except to say that in the run-up to COP26, because I've been heavily involved in the negotiations, this I can talk to you as an insider, we're now for the first time in a situation where China and the United States can potentially lead the way. We have never, I think, since the Second World War, had an international agreement where the United States wasn't in the lead. Today, there's an opportunity that we have the United States and China working together. And John Kerry would not disagree with anything I've been telling you. I know John Kerry quite well. And Minister Xie Zhenhua of China, who's leading the negotiations from China, would also understand these big risks.